Hey, what's up guys, BY Gaming here. So in this video, I basically want to talk about one improvement I feel could be made to PvP. And that, of course, is the fact that you cannot reset yourself all the way to the bottom if you finish in a high league, right? So let's say you finish in Legendary 2, which I so often do. That means you need to have at least 6,500 trophies, right? And so when you start a new tournament, you actually only drop down to 5,500. So you're automatically in the Legendary League, even without doing anything. And I feel like that's a huge problem. I would at least like the developers to implement some kind of an option to reset your trophies at the very beginning of each tournament. So let's say I finished in Legendary 2. I still want the option to go all the way back down to beginner. Now, obviously, there should be some kind of restriction in place so that you can't bully new players or anything like that, because you're going to have some really strong monsters if you finish in Legendary 2. But in general, I want the option to go back down to beginner and fight my way all the way up to the top again every single time. And the reason why I want this is because it would actually offer more variety, right? If I finish in Legendary 2 and, only drop down by 1,000 trophies or so, and I'm starting off in Legendary 3 or something like that, well, that really limits the monsters I can use, right? For example, this attack team I've been using, I basically had to recycle this every single tournament because, well, there are only so many monsters that can actually stand up against all the players in these leagues up here in, the Legendary Leagues and so on and so forth. So if I'm up here, I'm going to have to use pretty much the same monsters. Maybe give or take a couple, I can maybe substitute out one or something like that. But in general, it's going to be the same monsters that I use up here and the same monsters that I fight. Because once you're up here, you're basically going to be fighting players who have, Xiao Longs and, Lord Nabotis and Spectra and all these meta monsters. So, the monsters that you see up here are limited and the ones you can use up here are limited. But if I were to, for example, reset myself and I could go all the way back down to beginner and fight through bronze, silver, gold, and champion leagues, I could actually use other legendaries. I could use mythics and so on and so forth and actually, experiment around with these monsters and have some fun. And it would also, aside from the variety, it would actually solve the problem of not being able to use most of the monsters you get from breeding events and so on and so forth for anything other than gold collecting, right? They would actually have a purpose at this point. Let's say you get to start over from beginner, right? Fight your way through bronze, silver, and gold and so on and so forth. You could actually take those unranked monsters, the unranked mythics, the unranked legendaries, or, the rank 1s, rank 2s, and actually make use of them and, experiment around with them, have some fun. I personally would like to use legendaries again because they have some really broken movesets, and it just would be really fun to experiment around with them. And also, I would like to use some of the monsters that I never had any use for, right? My rank 1 Megalobot or my, rank 1 Tertellian or whatever, right? All the corrupted monsters I never had a chance to rank up and never will have a chance to rank up because Ludum is gone. And Nebula I'm only going to be using on Metropolitan monsters. It only makes sense to do that. So, and same thing with Metropolitan monsters that come out as well that I will never use, right? The ones that are mediocre by design and stats that I'll never use for anything other than gold collecting, now they'll actually have a purpose, which is that I can, start off from the beginning again every single time a tournament starts, and I could, have some fun basically just doing some battles and ranking myself up this way and going through the ranks and fighting some mediocre, level monsters and ranked monsters instead of going up against, maxed out teams all the way in the Legendary League every single time. And I have to do this by force because every single time I reset myself, right, it goes down to 5,500 trophies, which is, basically going to place you already in Legendary 4. Well, technically that starts you off in Legendary 4 then, not Legendary 3, but you get the idea. Even up here, you're basically going to have to fight through primarily meta monsters or players who have really, really, select monsters, and there's not really going to be as much variety as I would like. So yeah, if I could reset myself all the way down to the beginning, I would really, really like that. Just on the fact that I would actually have use for my other monsters instead of just using the exact same ones every single time and boring myself half to death. So yeah, that's pretty much one suggestion that I have for PvP is at least give the option to reset yourself all the way to the beginning, right? Or another thing I would like to see is maybe different types of leagues that you can do battles in, right? Kind of similar to the live duels, but also the fact that you could just choose a league to fight in, and have pre-selected teams for those leagues based on restrictions or, monsters that aren't allowed, kind of like in Pokemon, I've made a lot of Pokemon references here on this channel, but hey, when you go to the battle tower, you can only use certain monsters, whatever the case is. I would like to do I would like to see something like that, you know, maybe with different leagues or something where you can actually choose to, you know, fight in just this league or something like that, or just that league, you know, a league that's above it. And you're only allowed to participate based on certain level caps and so on and so forth, because that would make it so much more fun, right? Or maybe only legendaries or something, because then it's like I could use my Grakon, I could use monsters from, you know, older generations, and it would just be a lot more fun, you know, because then I could just experiment around and actually just be playing with monsters for the sake of experimenting with things, using overpowered moves, you know, on my legendaries and so on and so forth, and also just using the monsters that I get from all these events that I wouldn't ever be able to use otherwise, right? It would make sense to implement something like this into the game. It would be a lot more fun in my opinion, because, yeah, as I mentioned before, starting off with 5,500 trophies and starting off in Legendary 4 pretty much leaves no room for experimentation. Once you're already up at that point, you can guarantee that most of the players at this level will actually have level 150s, or, you know, at least rank 4s. They're going to be really, really recent monsters, so you have no chance of seeing any of the older monsters. But by implementing something like this, you could actually see maybe some of the older monsters have a comeback in the game. They could actually, you know, pose some kind of a, you know, threat to the monsters they'll be fighting down there, and you know, you could experiment with them and just have some fun as well. I personally would have, you know, I sometimes play through the adventure map just to be able to play around with some legendaries and stuff like that, so I see no reason why I shouldn't have some other option to use them in the game as well, such as PvP, right? So yeah, that would be my suggestion in a nutshell. So number one, have the option to reset your trophies all the way down to 0, so you can at least fight your way back up again every single time. I find that to be something that I would like to see, because it would be fun. It generally wouldn't even take that long, in my opinion, either, to fight your way all the way back up. You do have an entire month, after all, or to, you know, see the developers implement something where there are different leagues and you have to have preset teams for each one, and you're, you know, only allowed to use monsters of like this rank, or, you know, this rarity, or whatever the case is, so that you can actually just, you know, use monsters that you want to and have them serve some kind of a practical purpose, as opposed to just letting them sit there and do nothing, right? That includes legendaries of bygone eras and stuff like that, and also mythic monsters that you otherwise wouldn't use, right? Including monsters from the Metropolitan era that will be mediocre by design, and you won't ever rank up, and you won't have the resources to rank up anyway, right? Most of them will just go to the best monsters in the you know, eras every single month that are released. So you're not going to be using some of them. You might as well have some kind of purpose for them otherwise, right? Otherwise, they'll just be sitting there. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for this video. Again, if you liked it, please drop a like by just hitting that button and showing your support. And I will see you in the next video. Take care, guys. Peace.